Welcome to our YouTube video series on employment law. My name is Christopher Neufeld of Neufeld Legal. And in this particular video, we're going to be discussing some of the top reasons for being fired from your job. And these reasons are not being listed in any particular order, nor are we going to really get into whether they constitute termination with cause or termination without cause and what the legal severity is, because so much of that is predicated on facts and circumstances that are highly specific to the individual case. And in part, it is also determinative on other aspects, such as whether or not you have grounds to challenge your employer, even beyond the firing. And that's something that you need to be discussing with a lawyer, but we're not really going to go into that in this particular video. We're just going to hammer through and look at what some of the top reasons for being fired include. So let's just go through these. Number one, dishonesty. If you're falsifying records, you're providing deception in the job, theft, fraud, some form of breach of trust, that is an incident where your employer is not going to be trustworthy of you. You're going to have the feeling that irrespective of the situation, they need to have you removed from the job. Number two, conflicts of interest. These can be presumed or actual, but let's say you have an actual business interest that conflicts with your employer's actual business. That may drive your employer to want to relieve you from your position and not have that conflict of interest persist, whether it impacts their business or it impacts their relationships with their clients and customers. Number three, getting caught lying on a job application, a resume, or in a job interview. Finding out that you're deceptive at that point, especially early on, is not a good sign for moving forward. And when this comes to light, your employer might very reasonably consider yourself to be an issue, a problem. And if you're that willing to lie at the outset, what is the potential down the road? They have to get rid of you. Number four, having an inappropriate relationship in the office, either with your superior or with some subordinate, somebody junior to yourself. Harassment, sexual allegations, quickly addressed by removing that individual before they can cause more problems, and especially since the company is going to have to deal with repercussions of that incident. Number five, insolence and insubordination. Whether you're disobeying your direct supervisor, your boss, you're acting rude or abrasive, your disposition towards others. That is a problem that they cannot sustain, hence oftentimes a reason to get fired. Number six, breaking important rules or policies, especially when they're published, they're reiterated, and your attention has been brought to them. Rules and policies are designed to protect the company, to protect the employer, and it's also used to satisfy their rationale for releasing you from your employment. Number seven, theft or fraud that is work-related. Now, this can take a range of different aspects and includes intellectual property and customer records. Intellectual property is at the core of many businesses, and similarly, customer and client records and contacts is critical to many businesses. So when you take that action, not only might you expect to get fired, you might well expect to have a lawsuit brought against yourself with respect to that breach of those obligations, because it has the potential to harm the company going forward. Number eight, harassment or violence in the workplace. Never a good thing. Nowadays, it needs to be dealt with swiftly and clearly so that the employer can say that we don't allow any of it whatsoever, irrespective of who it is, irrespective of the situation, even the repercussions. They deal with it quickly, harshly, and remove the people who are involved, even if they are being a bit rushed in their approach. Number 9, abuse of technology. This is the misuse of the employer's equipment, abusing social media, spending too much time searching the web, doing personal work on the internet, on the computer system, when you should be focused and devoted to the function of your employer. Number 10, damaging company property. A lot of companies have some very expensive property, and even though it might be accidental, if it's seen to be a concurrent action or a lack of focus, it might well lead to blame being put on the individual, even for insurance purposes, and that individual being relieved from their job. Number 11, inappropriate activity on the job, such as alcohol and drug use on site. Never a good thing. That stuff needs to be kept off-site, creates problems, also creates a lot of legal liability for the employer. Number 12, off-duty conduct that reflects very poorly on the employer. It's in this age of perception and so much being seen out there. A lot of employers try to take immediate action to clean up their image when one of their employees does something. Even though it comes to a cost to the employer, their actions are swift and immediate all too often. Number 13, inappropriate activity on social media, especially as it relates to one's employer. Posting stuff that is negative towards one's employer, their business, or even their competitors on social media, or just even gives a perception of negativity or isn't frowned upon or is not looked upon well within the company's policies, can be reasons for firing. May well go too far, and the companies have to suffer the repercussions of it, but they all too often do move very swiftly on those matters. Number 14, absenteeism and lateness. Persistent and without a valid excuse. It's one thing if you have medical conditions come about, tragedies in the family, children, loved ones that need to be taken care of, that's something slightly different. Then there's leave arrangements, and you need to look at them, even often talk to a lawyer, talk to HR, and get those addressed. But if it's matters that are within your control, you need to be punctual. You need to be on time. You need to be working your hours, not leaving early, not arriving late. Number 15, bring your personal problems to work. Although not necessarily a terminable reason with cause, those kind of individuals, if you cannot separate your work time from your personal time, very problematic for the employer. Employer needs to deal with it and keep the environment positive and not have you in a depressed state, psychologically bad state, influencing and adversely affecting all the other employees. And this leads to number 16, performance issues, such as gross incompetence being the most justifiable, yet even poor performance of itself can be the basis of taking action to avoid continued poisoning of the work environment. Quality of work goes down. You're being paid for a job. You're not being paid to do inferior work. They want you to do adequate work or even superior work. That's what the arrangement is. You don't perform, they don't want to pay you. And if you're not going to change your attitude, that's a problem for the employer. And what do they do? Very well, fire you, terminate you from your job. Now, just because you've been fired from your job, and there might be a rationale for it, does that mean that there is not the basis to get compensated for it? The employer is looking out for itself, but you have to look out for yourself. And as such, you need to be speaking with a lawyer when you are fired even where the employer is claiming that you're being terminated with cause. Because terminating with cause, in many respects, only means that they can refrain from paying you termination pay, severance pay. Even though that's difficult to prove, there may be other obligations that are owed to you. And those obligations may be outstanding and continuing, and especially in certain jurisdictions where they're not pursued properly by the employers, such that you should be looking at those aspects, seeing if you have rights and obligations that go beyond termination and severance pay, and see if those obligations are outstanding to yourself. In addition to the fact that termination with cause is extremely difficult to prove in a court of law, and as such, you really need to look at those aspects, consider them thoroughly, talk to the appropriate legal counsel, and find out how to approach a situation effectively and in your best interests. Because just because you've been fired, as you've seen from the list of fireable reasons, a lot of those are not termination with cause, but termination without cause. And even those that are termination with cause and therefore justifying some exclusions, they can be very difficult to prove, especially if your lawyer knows what to be looking for and is able to get justifiable counterposing strategies to challenge your former employer and protect your interests and advance them accurately, both in negotiations and, if necessary, in a court of law. Thank you.